If you have gone through anything traumatic, whether it be a traumatic relationship or any type of trauma, that it isn't your fault and it's going to take some time to work through it. Healing is not linear. It takes a lot of consistency. It takes a lot of resilience. And it takes a lot of hard work, but it's possible. You don't have to live like that.
Welcome back to Healing and Growing Hand in Hand podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Tickel, and our guest today is Lisa Abrotsky. See, I said it fine before the tape. Abrotsky. I said it fine before the taping, right? She is a licensed marriage and family therapist. She is also, this is really interesting, she is a Gottman Level 1 and 2 marriage family certification. She's also a certified parenting instructor, a batter intervention facilitator in Florida, and she's EMDR certified, which is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And so that's what we're going to talk about today, really, is EMDR and how it helps in healing trauma. So welcome, Lisa. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I think this is fascinating and I want to do more of these. So anytime you need me, I'm here.
I mean, I know that there's a lot of different modalities for trauma healing, and I tell people, it's really important to go to trauma therapy because we have all these great modalities, and this is just one of them. And I'll be honest, I have done EMDR myself, and it has been a substantial help in my healing.
Yes, I have too. Actually, that's why I got certified in EMDR is because of doing it with my therapist. And I was like, wow, it's a quick introduction into all of this trauma that we do repress. There's a great book, the body keeps the score.
Yes.
And our trauma gets stuck in our cells. It gets stuck in our brain. I call it like having a filing cabinet with all of your trauma in there. And we shut it away thinking that if I don't deal with it or it doesn't come up, I'm okay. But we don't understand that our body allows it to come up in several different ways. So what EMDR really does is it allows us to tap into those repressed memories and those repressed traumas and triggers and move them up to where you can, kind of like a street sweeper. You go in, you bring them up, and it sweeps it out, and then you could replace it with something that's more positive. Like, I survived this, or I'm not in fear of this, or this isn't going to happen to me again.
Or I am lovable.
Or I am lovable. Yeah, absolutely.
So my experience, and I think a lot of the probably the biggest fear when it comes to people starting their healing journey is reliving what they've experienced, right? And the truth is, when we go through our triggers, we're actually reliving that moment in our body and in our brain. So we're already kind of reliving it, right? I did not experience reliving it necessarily with EMDR. Like, I didn't get all the negative sensations. How it helped me is I did go back and kind of relive stuff, but I became empowered.
Yes.
Is that true? Because I feel like my experience might be different than everybody else's. I don't know.
So here's the thing, right? When we have trauma, our trauma, like I said, stays with us, right? So our trauma will come up in different ways. When we get triggered, for instance, I've done EMDR with a client who got into a car accident, was afraid to drive. We did sessions of EMDR. I think there was a total of 4, and she reported back to me she was able to drive. So here's the thing. We're never going to not have to go into a vehicle to get someplace.
Right.
So even if your feelings do come up or your triggers do come up, they're going to come up in your life regardless.
Correct. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And they're going to catch you off guard usually too.
And maybe not to the magnitude that it was happening in the initial, trauma, but
Right.
it's still going to show up in some way. It could show up
Hmm.
in irritability, it can show up in anxiety, depression, you know. I tell my clients it shows up sideways. We're not expecting it.
Yes, exactly. It's kind of like the rug gets pulled out from under you.
Hmm.
And how I describe when I get triggered, how I've learned to understand the difference between me just reacting or me being triggered
Hmm.
is I feel like I go from zero to over the top in an instant. And my
Hmm.
reaction that I want to give or my response doesn't really line up with what's going on. It's usually over the top,
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
right?
Absolutely. So that's your body is responding. So that's where the body keeps the score. Your body is responding to a similar feeling to being triggered by that episode or that incident. What I like to do with my clients in the beginning is we identify a safe place, right? And
Right.
you can utilize
Yeah.
this with anybody in therapy, regardless if you're going to do EMDR with them or not. So you have that safe place to go to if it gets too heavy. You
Hmm.
know, we want to bring it up so we can bring it out so we could walk through it. Because
Right.
if we don't walk through it, then it's always going to show up in our lives at the most inopportune times.
Yeah, really inconvenient. It's
Right.
really inconvenient. So tell us then, how does EMDR work to help the brain process our trauma differently than like the traditional talk therapy? Because I know, and I talk about there's a place for talk therapy, but when it
Hmm.
comes to trauma healing, it is so important. I can't say it enough to go through trauma therapy and use one of these modalities or more than one that's going to help you.
Hmm.
But trauma therapy is very different. But if you can explain that to us.
So when we reprocess traumatic memories, the process is the brain reproducing the traumatic memory. It allows us to integrate the experience in a way that reduces the emotional intensity and the negative beliefs associated with it. So when we bring it up, we're asking, where were you? What does it look like around you? So we're putting you in that subconscious state,
Hmm.
almost like hypnosis. I tell my clients because when you tell them EMDR, they're like, "What is that?" Right? They don't know. It's almost like a state where we take you back to that experience where the trauma took place, and you're bringing up all of those emotions, and you're rating how it's coming up for you, right? And what you tell yourself about you as a person based off of what took place. And then we're starting to go through this emotion, right? And some people break down, some people cry, some people,
Hmm.
they're really there with that
Yeah.
emotion. And then you start to see it decrease and decrease and decrease and decrease. The bilateral stim is amazing because it's really, like I say, street sweeper. It really is sweeping it. It's like cleaning up that memory. It's cleaning up that memory and cleaning it out so that we can replace it with something more positive. So yeah, you're bringing up that trauma. You
Hmm.
are, and that's uncomfortable for some people, but I feel as though if you're in therapy and you've had a traumatic experience, you no longer want to live like that anymore.
Hey, thank you for listening so far. If you're enjoying this podcast, be sure to subscribe so you won't ever miss an episode. No, no, not at all. No. And I'll tell you a little bit of one of my experiences with EMDR, which was really interesting. And I actually ran into another person who had the same experience because I thought it was so unusual. I even asked my therapist, I said, is this normal? And she's like, well, I haven't experienced this, but it's not wrong. So at the time it was little Lisa was
Mm,
going in and talking to her abusers, and she wanted to have a voice again.
mm,
And so at one point, when I came out of the one session, she said, okay, when you go back in, just speak, just say it
mhm,
to them.
mhm,
And
mhm,
I was like, oh no, no, I can't do that because I'll get hurt, right? And she
mhm,
said, okay, why don't you come alongside little Lisa and let her have a voice? And that was a game changer for me. And I don't know why that worked,
mm. Mhm.
And what was really interesting is little Lisa, for the first time, really got to say everything that she wanted to say. And the abuser did not say anything. They didn't dismiss it. They didn't say anything. But she wasn't, yes, she was angry and she was hurt, but she wasn't out of control. She was
Mhm.
completely in control, but she got to voice all that stuff that she wanted to voice back then.
Mhm. Mhm. It really it really I say it takes you from the victim of this to a
Yes.
survivor of this. And that's
Hmm.
so powerful for people to survive their trauma,
Yeah.
to be able to say that, yes, this happened, but, I'm not going to take it throughout life with me, and hurt other people because of it.
Yeah, and the thing that's really freeing for me is not feeling those emotions anymore. If I do, think of a memory of what happened, it's almost like I'm telling someone else's story. It doesn't have that same grip on me that it had
Hmm.
before.
Hmm.
It's really
Absolutely.
lessened that pain.
Hmm. And it lessens the pain so much so that you could walk through life with a sense of healing instead of a
Yes.
sense of anxiety or a sense of, at any moment I can feel this heaviness of something similar than at the time that my trauma took place.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. No, it's really I find it empowering. Absolutely. So, what can someone expect during an EMDR session, and how does the process of the bilateral stimulation help with healing? So, we haven't talked about what the bilateral stimulation is, but if you can explain that, and then just kind of how the EMDR sessions work.
So, in the beginning, we're going to do a history taking, right?
Hmm.
We're going to get all of the history of what took place. I almost have my clients sometimes do a timeline. If there's,
Oh yeah.
what we do is a simple trauma, one isolated incident, or a complex trauma that we've had multiple incidents take place. So I do a bit of a timeline. How old were you? What was going on in your life? What was the
Hmm.
trauma surrounding? What do you remember about the trauma? That's a history taking, okay?
Right.
Kind of similar to doing talk therapy at that moment, right?
Right.
With that, I identify where it's most powerful to start, right? We identify the most powerful traumatic experience. We might start there. For somebody who's hesitant, I might go a little lighter and do
Hmm.
something that's not as traumatic, but still traumatic to them. After the history taking, the first session, I'll do a safe place with them. Because as we know, EMDR is a process. It's not a quick fix, although it's
Hmm.
amazing. It might take a couple sessions to get
Hmm.
through one traumatic experience. So, what we do is we do the safe place so that they have some place to go back to after session if their feelings come up.
Yeah.
And their safe place is very soothing. I tell them they're going to love this part. It's the best part of EMDR. You're
It
going
was
to
my
take
favorite
this.
place. It was my
It
absolute favorite
was.
place. I still go back there.
Yeah, it is. It's such a great thing. And, people can utilize that without even having EMDR training
Yeah.
for their clients. You need a place to be able to emotionally regulate and, de escalate yourself down at times.
Hmm. Hmm.
So we'll do a safe place. Then the next session, we'll go in and we'll pick that trauma and we will go into, there's a script, an EMDR script, and we'll go through the script. And they're basically saying what took place, what their emotions were surrounding it, how it made them feel, not good enough. I don't have a voice,
Hmm.
not strong enough, not lovable, whatever that may be. And what do they want to think about themselves?
Mm, mhm, mhm. Yeah.
Because
Yeah, because
that's
we don't
what
focus on
we're,
that.
no, but that's what we're installing in
Right.
EMDR is what do you want the narrative to be?
Right, right.
What do you want to think about yourself now based off of what happened then?
And that is one thing in EMDR that helped me open up my mind, because I tend to think very black and white, and I've been trying to work on adding color per se. I had one coach say that to me. He says, "Lisa, you think in black and white, you need to start thinking in color." And I thought, he's right, but I don't know what that means, but he's right. But EMDR did open that up for me, because it helped me to look for other options other than, because that's what happens when we get triggered or something happens. We go, our body and our mind goes right to that old same place and does the same thing over and over.
Mhm.
And, until you start getting some self-awareness, you do it without even thinking about it. But then when you get the self-awareness, you're like, but I don't know what else to do. So
Mhm.
EMDR did help me open up and expand that.
It's so funny that you said that because I'm thinking back to my EMDR journey, and my EMDR journey, all that kept coming up was color. You know, they when we would stop and I would open my eyes and then tell me what you see now or what you feel now. It was colors. It was only colors.
Oh, that's
So it was
really
very
cool.
interesting. It was very interesting. So of course, as a therapist, go back and research what do these colors mean in therapy.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And what'd you find out? Did you find out anything? I'm curious.
Well, there wasn't a lot of red, so that was good.
Yeah, yeah, I was gonna say red must be anger.
I think red would be anger. There was a lot of purple, and I feel like
Ugh.
that purple could have been, moving towards the healing,
Yeah,
moving
that's what I
towards
got.
the
Healing.
healing. Mhm.
That's
Mhm.
the feeling I got when you said purple, is that you're moving towards healing. That's interesting.
Yep.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love colors. Yeah, I was told that in 2016. And at the time, it kind of irritated me. I knew he was right, because I knew, I think, a lot in black and white, and that's why I went into legal and all that.
Mhm.
But I didn't know what he meant, and now I'm discovering it. It's just thinking outside the box, and
Mhm.
and I used to say, "Oh, just think outside the box." I just say it so flippantly and not do it myself. And now I have to consciously do it. It's much easier now,
Mhm.
so that I don't go back to old habits, I guess.
What do they say in recovery? First thought wrong. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, this question, this is one, and I think we already kind of visited it, but it says many survivors fear revisiting painful memories. How does EMDR ensure that reprocessing is safe and not re-traumatizing? So that's kind of similar to what I was mentioning in the beginning, where a lot of times I think that's what a lot of people fear is, oh God, I'm gonna have to go back and I'm gonna have to completely relive everything. I'm gonna have to feel everything and experience everything, but that's not true. Hey, if you're ready to go deeper in your healing journey, join our 6-week workshop. Sign up today at women's childhood abuse healing workshop.com or click on the link below. I'd love to see you there and help you on your healing journey.
So it is to a degree. Like I don't want to downplay the fact that you're going to be reliving that trauma for that moment, but you're also going to be able to walk through that trauma and not have it interrupt your life anymore.
Mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm.
the outcome is so much stronger than that moment of, or however much it is,
Yeah.
moments of feeling that trauma come up, that trigger come up. It's going to come up, but it needs to come up so that we can not feel that way anymore.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know?
and the thing to remember is you're in a safe place doing this, and
Mm-hmm.
and I know that my therapist reminded me of that
Mm-hmm.
regularly, in things that she would say to remind me that I'm in a safe place, and if this is too much, really walked me through it on my timeline,
Mm-hmm.
on where I was at, because there's a couple times I came on and I wasn't in a good place, and she'd
Mm-hmm.
say, we don't have to do EMDR today. We can just talk or whatever it is you want to do. So that's the thing that, we have to remember. We may have to, go back and revisit that, but we're in a safe place. We're not in the same place we were
Mm-hmm.
back in the day, right?
Mm-hmm. What I like to do with my clients too, if I check in with them, I always check in with them in the beginning because either we've done an EMDR session the previous time that we met. I want to check in with them. Did anything come up? A
Yeah.
lot of a lot of people will tell me that they've had very vivid dreams. I said that's
Yeah.
not unusual.
Yeah.
It's your subconscious really working through this in
Hmm.
your sleep, you know? Um, but I check in with people to see, I check in with my clients to see where are you at? How was the last session? Anything else come up around it? I think there has to be a level of process as well as EMDR. EMDR isn't very, it's not like traditional talk therapy. So
Mm-mm.
I always want to check in with my clients just to see what's come up for them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because you won't get that any other way. So I do like an EMDR, I do a process session next, anything come up? Do you want to process it? If nothing came up, all right, let's jump right back into where we were.
Yeah. 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 It's interesting. It's really, because I had a lot of different, um, the emotions weren't as intense, but
Hmm.
the visual was very, very intense.
Hmm. So that is the bilateral stim. And so that
Okay.
when you're doing EMDR and you're closing your eyes, and you're bringing up everything about that traumatic experience, sense, your visuals, your auditory, every
Mm-hmm.
sense you can sense at that time comes up. A lot of that is the visual part of it,
Mm-hmm.
more so than the emotional part. So the bilateral stim really allows you, and this is bilateral stim.
Yeah, I
I'm
meant to
gonna
ask you to
avoid.
explain the bilateral stem, what that meant,
Mhm.
or
So
what
the
it looks like.
bilateral, sorry, I'm adjusting. The bilateral stim is this. This is the old, I shouldn't say the old way of doing it. This is
The
the
original way?
the
Yeah.
original traditional way of doing it. Um, Now people have light bars. They
Mm-hmm.
have headphones that will make a sound in each ear.
Yeah, I've
Um,
had that one, and I've had on because my therapist, I was on Zoom with her, or not Zoom, but on
yep.
online, and so she
Mhm.
has one where it goes across the screen. A ball goes across the screen.
Yep, that's how I do it because we're in 8 states. So I do EMDR in 8 states around, the United States. I do it all virtually. I have that ball that goes
Mm-hmm.
across. Clients love it too because they can pick the color of the ball. We have all different colors.
Oh,
I was like, yeah, pick the color of the ball today,
how
So
funny.
it's cute. But that's what allows that drawer, that cabinet, that to open up and really take out that file and really, get into where I was at that time that this took place is the bilateral stim. And that's all neurology. I couldn't even explain it if I tried. I know Francine Shapiro said that the way she created EMDR was she would go like this with her eyes back and forth. And it would allow her to bring up what she was upset about. Um,
Hmm.
it's very similar to, well, and I tell my clients the way that I explain it to them is it's REM sleep. When you're in rapid eye movement,
Oh, okay.
the rapid eye movement back and forth like that is what we do when we're in our deepest sleep. And that's where we dream.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that's exactly what we're simulating when we do EMDR, the bilateral stim, is the back and forth to bring up that recollection, the memory.
Well, that's interesting because I find that interesting though, and I didn't even realize that until we were talking about it. But I thought, well, it's just because I'm very visual that's
Hmm.
why it was very visual for me. It was very detailed for me. Like when I was a little girl, I mean, when I was standing there, I could see myself as a little girl looking up at my mom, talking to her, and it was very,
Hmm. Hmm.
very vivid. But
Hmm.
yet she wasn't scared. She wasn't sad. She wasn't, she's a little angry.
Hmm.
But other than that, there wasn't that strong emotion that I probably had back in the day when it originally happened.
Right, right. And we remember those things so vividly.
Yes, we do.
So vividly. even though I tell clients that it's like we have a recorder on, like an old VHS. I'm aging myself here, but remember the old VHSs
Yes.
where it used to have the cover? We can hear all of it, right? We might not be able to see it because our brain takes us to a different place because it's too traumatic, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But everything is there, and we're bringing up that visual with the bilateral to meet those emotions, you know? And
Hmm.
a lot of clients too have thought about this for so many years that, they've grown strength in this. You weren't
Mm.
little anymore to be able to challenge your mom when you were talking to her, even though in your mind you were still little Lisa. You have grown so much, you've challenged yourself so much. So it's almost like, God, why did I hold on to this for so long?
Exactly, exactly. Well, there's an interesting statistic out there I got from one of my guests that on average, women are sexually abused between the ages of 13 and 17, and
Hmm.
they don't share that experience for 4 decades on average.
Hmm. It's
That's
true.
40 years that they're suffering. And I know from my experience with working with women and myself, and I didn't have sexual abuse, but that's true with any abuse. There's just so much deep shame that shuts them down. And then I don't know why it is 4 decades later, I guess we get tired of living with it and tired of,
Hmm. Hmm.
all the effects that, from the abuse. I don't know, but that it's interesting that that is a very common statistic.
I would totally believe that, within 20, at least 2 decades to four
Yeah.
decades, that it would be coming out, and it's, it's very shameful, and it's very. I've had clients who told me that they don't believe that their family would believe them, that they kept
Oh,
it in
yeah.
for so long that they didn't think if they told anybody it would matter.
And the more time that goes on, the more chances they're probably not going to believe. That's what we think, right?
Hmm. 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 And then there's clients who say, if I don't have to deal with it, it didn't happen. I can
Mm,
make believe that it didn't take place. If I don't have to remember it or feel it or talk about it, I can make believe that it didn't take place.
but our bodies say something different,
Yes, they do.
right?
They keep it. They keep the score. That's such a wonderful book too.
It is. It is. I've read
Yeah.
it myself. Yeah, I think everybody needs to read it. Definitely.
Mhm.
So, what are some of the common effects people experience after EMDR sessions, and how can survivors manage emotional shifts during the healing process?
Okay, so some of the experiences after the EMDR is going to be like those vivid dreams that I talked
Hmm.
about. You
Yeah.
could have very vivid dreams. You could have nothing at all, believe it or not. You
Yeah,
could
I've
have
had that.
nothing at all. It was, that you could also have a sense of relief that you're actually working through this after, who knows, 4 decades,
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
not saying anything. Um, it's a wide array of emotions. But the most that I have heard from my clients is really the vivid dreams.
Hmm.
Um, that's the majority of what I've heard, the vivid dreams. In terms of the feelings that come up around this, I think that was the second question. Um, some people are just so tired of living with
Hmm.
that they're at the point ready to do it.
Hmm.
So I would say like a sense of relief, accomplishment, motivation. There's fear, of course. There's always going to be fear in something that you have no idea what the outcome is going to look like. Especially people with trauma are very attached to what ifs,
Yeah. Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
doing your best as a therapist to explain the process to somebody is so beneficial so that they understand what's going to happen step by step, I think is important, which
Yeah.
happens in the beginning when you're doing that history taking. Um, it's really hard to explain EMDR to a client too. A lot of the therapists that explain it say you just have to do it. It's a
Yeah,
doing therapy.
yeah, yeah. And I've had some people who, in between therapy sessions, they'll have a really hard time, and they've actually
Hmm.
kind of reached out to me. And so I have an idea, but I want to hear from a therapist. In between sessions, what can a person do if they come out of this particular EMDR session and it's just a rough time?
Hmm.
What can they do in between therapy sessions that can help them get through that and manage it better?
Oh, I have so many suggestions. First and
Perfect.
foremost, if it gets bad, like bad, always call your therapist.
Correct.
We
Yes.
have an obligation to be there for our clients, no matter what's going on. So if it gets bad, contact a therapist, let them know what's going on. But there's so many different things, people who are creative, I would say you could draw, you can paint, write, put your emotions on paper.
Amen. Amen. That's been huge for me.
Yeah, I mean, even exactly what's coming up. So you're
Yeah.
seeing a visual, right? I want you to draw that visual. What is coming up for you, right? Or if you don't draw or you can't tap into that creative part, journal, you know?
Hmm.
Utilize your safe place. Do something that reduces stress. I'm a big proponent of meditation and yoga, also
Exercise.
exercise,
Walking, getting out.
absolutely.
For me, it's
Hmm.
getting out and walking and getting the fresh air and the sunshine and the movement.
Hmm.
I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear your thoughts, your comments, your questions about this episode or really anything that has to do with trauma. So you can comment below or you can reach out to me at asklisatickle@gmail.com. I'd really looking forward to hearing from you.
Hmm. A lot of times I tell clients, ground yourself, right?
Yes.
Where you go outside and you put your feet, bare feet, on the ground,
Hmm.
right? And you close your eyes and you tell yourself, I feel this, I hear this, I smell this. If your eyes are open, I see this. So it's really getting in touch with grounding yourself to present, not what's going on, not what's happened, but right in that moment.
I do that when I walk. I don't listen to music. I don't listen to anything.
Hmm.
I carry my phone with me for safety purposes, but I pay attention to all the sounds, the
Hmm.
smells. I look around, I pay attention, and to kind of bring me back because I mean, explain why that is because I think I know, but you're a therapist and you can explain because I'll let you explain because I could add my 2 cents, but I don't, I'm not a therapist.
I believe that first, my this is my personal belief. This isn't my professional belief, but we are so tapped in to electronics, to constantly doing. That's just the way we are in society. That when you are really taking the time to care for yourself, you want to and need to be present.
Hmm.
When you're taking your walk, right? And you're looking around and you're smelling the smells and you're hearing the whatever's being done around you, it really gives you information too, about what's going on. And if you are having my therapist, I'm a therapist that sees a therapist. By the way, any therapist who doesn't see a therapist, get you some help. We need
Yes,
it. We do.
you
But
do.
my therapist says, I want you to be present to where you are and what is going on around you. It takes you out of whatever you are doing up here.
The loop. It breaks
Hmm.
that loop, that ruminating.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, because for me, I'm a huge overthinker. I didn't realize that until a few years ago. And I tend to ruminate. And I can
Yes.
ruminate for weeks if I have to.
Yeah. Yeah. Another good technique with that, on a side note, is I do the what ifs with my client. So you're
Mm,
ruminating, you're spiraling, you're in this circle, this loop. So what if this happens? Then what are you going to do? What if
mhm.
that happens? Then what are you going to do? So it kind of gives them some power in that
Yes.
overthinking because they have somewhat of a plan. Chances are they're never going to have to do any of it because it's
Right.
not going to manifest. But it alleviates some of that. They think they have somewhat of a plan.
Yeah, because our brain is just trying to fix things. It's just trying to find a
Yeah,
problem to fix, you know,
absolutely.
and I give them a lot of
Absolutely.
reasons to, to do that.
We all do. The other
Yes.
thing too that you can do is I like to have my clients take a journal about what comes up for them during the
Hmm.
EMDR because I feel as though
Oh.
we don't want to hold on to it. We want to put it down on paper. We want to have that out of ourselves and on
Yes.
let the paper hold that for the time being. And I also think the safe place, super, super important. Anybody who doesn't do a safe place with any client, you're not doing justice by your client. Safe place is super easy. Everybody can do a safe place with their clients. What do you hear? What do you feel? What do you smell? What do what can you touch? All of that. You go back to your safe place in between the EMDR sessions to self-soothe,
Hmm.
really.
I am a huge proponent of writing though, because I have found, like, I call it a brain dump, and I just do a brain dump. And when I'm having those moments where it just feels really heavy and
Mm-hmm.
it's really rattling around a lot in my head and I know I'm spending a lot of time on it, I literally just sit down and write what's coming up. I don't
Mm-hmm.
worry about punctuation or even spelling. I
Yep.
literally just write it out. And it's a huge help. And then sometimes, well, I always read it back, and then sometimes it tells me some kind of message, like I can kind of figure out what's going
Mm-hmm.
on.
Mm-hmm.
But there's something about getting it out of here, whether you say it out loud or write it,
Mm-hmm.
is just it really does get it out of your head. It's not bouncing around in there and driving me crazy.
Yeah. And it also gives you an idea of a direction. Once you read it back to yourself, oh wow, like this is, hearing it, auditory is completely different.
Yes.
It's a different way of learning. There's four different ways of learning. So I'm hearing it back and I'm saying, huh, I actually have put a plan together without
Yes.
knowing it.
Yes. Because it'll sound different than what was going on in your
Hmm.
head.
Yes. Yeah,
And that's why it's
definitely.
helpful. That's why it works. I
Hmm.
mean, it works for me. I've done it numerous times. Yeah.
I
So
always tell
that's
my
something.
clients, writing
Yeah,
is very therapeutic.
it is. It is. It is. And you don't have to take a lot of time. You don't have to
No.
take a lot of time, seriously. I mean, I even did something. This is kind of interesting. I was really down, and I don't go visit my parents' grave. I just don't.
Hmm.
And I felt like I needed to go there. And I sat down and I wrote them a letter. I don't know how long I was sitting there. I still have it. It's got to be 15 pages.
Oh my.
And boy, when I walked away, I honestly, I wish I would have timed how long I was sitting there. It was a long time, obviously,
Hmm.
and the tears and everything, but it was so therapeutic. And it
Hmm.
gave me a very different perspective of my parents that I never had before.
Hmm.
And one of them was, I lost my mom when I was 16. My
Hmm.
dad became a single father. Like all this stuff, it hit me that the 16-year-old
Yeah.
old girl didn't see that the, grown adult now sees. It's really,
Right.
yeah, writing is just, it's amazing. It does some crazy stuff. Yeah, it's very therapeutic. I always recommend that. So, one more question, no, two more questions actually. How can someone know if EMDR is the right approach for them? And what should they look for in a trained EMDR therapist? You kind of mentioned a few things there.
Okay, so if it's the right approach, you're not going to know until you do it.
Correct. Right. Right. And it doesn't
That,
work for everybody, but I've heard for the most part it does.
hmm You know, I feel at that point that the client, a lot of clients, and I love this, Nowadays, clients know what they want. They're coming to therapy and
Yeah.
they are educated. They
Yeah.
know exactly what they want. They come into our office and they say, I want to work with this. I know this therapy works with that. And I'm like, yes, you're finally educating yourself and you're
Yeah.
advocating for yourself. So I'm so excited about
And
that.
education is power. It is one of your
It
superpowers.
is. It is. Will it work for everybody? No.
Mm-mm.
Nothing works for everybody. And that's where I am as a therapist is I meet the clients where they're at. I suggest or I invite if they're open and willing, let's do it. If it works, great. If it doesn't, hey, let's go to the toolbox and get another tool.
Exactly. It's not the only tool. There's other things out there.
And that's, I think as we really attack and approach this mental health crisis that we're in
Yeah.
for so many years,
Mm-hmm.
therapists are really having to get educated and, trained and credentialed. I love taking trainings because I want as much information as I
Mm-hmm.
can. No client is going to be the same. There's
Yeah.
going to be clients that are different that don't necessarily work with that approach as the best approach for them.
Mm-hmm.
So the only way to really know if EMDR is going to work is to do it.
Yeah, is to try it. That's yeah. There's no yeah. There's you're not going to know ahead of time. You're just not. And then what should we look for in a trained EMDR therapist? Because I will say this, and this is my opinion only, and you probably agree with me. I've had coaches, people who are coaches who are not therapists. Oh, I'm EMDR certified. And me personally, I would not go to a coach. I would only go to a therapist, a licensed therapist to have EMDR. It is not a flippant kind of modality. It's very serious.
So we do agree. Lisa
I
and
knew it.
Lisa agree. So my personal feeling is we as therapists do a lot of training, a lot of education. Um, a lot of therapists become therapists because we're trying to work with things that have gone on in our life.
Correct. Yes. Yeah.
So we come to the table almost prepared, right? There was no reason why I became a therapist other than I was trying to help myself or help my family. So
Hmm.
when you're a coach, you don't necessarily get all of that, you
Oh no.
know? Um, and I also feel when you're working with somebody who's had trauma, you don't want to open up that Pandora's box and not know how to put it back together.
Oh yeah, I know. That's the thing that scares me is something could
hmm
go sideways and they're not going to know how to bring you out of it.
hmm So a therapist versus a coach is the therapist can pivot quickly into, oh my God, this is what's going on. I need to, maybe this isn't working. Let's pivot real quick to
Yeah.
something that will work. A coach might not have those tools.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
that scares me. I don't know any coaches that have an EMDR training or certification. I'm not
I could go
aware.
online right now and yes, I'm serious. I probably over the weekend I could become an EMDR certified person. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
I'm saddened by that
I
because,
am too. It
it's
dilutes it a lot. It really, and the thing that scares me is if somebody does go to somebody who's not a therapist and they get a really bad experience, all it does is create more trauma.
absolutely. And then that poor client doesn't want to re-engage with a
No.
therapist because of the exposure that they had in the past. Well, what's going to be different now? And oh my God, no.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what's scary. So, you do need to be certified though to do EMDR, right? It's not
You have
right.
to be, yep, you have to be trained. So there's several trainings, and what I, the one that I did was in 2016. So Um, 2016 took the training. It is a weekend training, the one that I did in person. We're doing EMDR on ourselves as clinicians with a team, which I thought was awesome. I loved it.
Wow.
And then you do consultations for a certain amount of hours. And then you go on to do more consultation to get you can become a consultant under EMDRA, EMDRIA, I think it is. The I guess it's like the licensing board of EMDR. So you can become a
Oh.
consultant as well. And it all has to do with hours and
Mm-hmm.
exposure and being able to work with a supervisor who is monitoring your EMDR work, and giving you feedback. So I don't know the qualifications of a coach to be able to do that. And I'm not saying that coaches aren't good in some aspect. I just don't feel like trauma is where it's at.
No, 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 I agree. I agree. Just because it is very specialized and the
Hmm.
techniques needed to help someone with a trauma,
Hmm.
working through their trauma, it's not just, again, it's not just talk therapy. It's not NLP. It's not just you changing the
Right.
way you think, you know, yeah, that worries me too. And I see a lot of, I had one coach I was kind of working with, and, his thought is, well, anybody can be a coach. If you got life experience, you can be a coach. And I thought, ooh, at the time it didn't hit me right. And, it didn't take me long to figure out that's not true. That's not
Hmm.
true. That is
Hmm.
not true. You can do a lot of damage to people. And that's a thing that I always worry about too, is I don't want to do something that's going to hurt someone. I'm always trying to be very careful about that so that I don't, the women that I work with are very vulnerable, and I don't want
Yes.
to do anything to
Yeah.
further traumatize them.
Yeah. Absolutely. You could connect. Listen, if we if we if we had the best girlfriend, right, and we were telling our girlfriend a situation with no experience, she's going to handle it a different way than we would,
Right.
with some experience and education and certification and understanding of how to deal with people's emotions and what could happen if you bring up this trauma with a person. You have a better chance than going to the girlfriend.
Right, right, right. The girlfriend, you're just going to talk, 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 talk. And,
Yeah,
you might feel
yeah.
better sometimes, but I know for me, if I keep reliving or keep re-talking about stuff, it doesn't always make me feel good,
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, so I've got one last question. What do you want to
Yes.
leave our listeners with?
Oh, what do I want to leave listeners with? Oh my God, this is the one I don't know how to answer. Uh, I want to leave the listeners with the perspective that if you have gone through anything traumatic, whether it be a traumatic relationship or any type of trauma, that it isn't your fault and it's going to take some time to work through it. Healing is not linear. It takes a lot of consistency. It takes a lot of resilience. And it takes a lot of hard work, but
Hmm.
it's possible. You don't have to live like that.
And it's worth it. The work is
It's
worth it.
so worth it.
And it
So
does get
worth it.
easier. At the
Hmm.
beginning it's really hard and it's scary, but as you're further along on your healing journey, for me, it's gotten definitely easier for me.
Hmm. And you establish boundaries and you become powerful and you won't accept anybody else's crap.
That's right. That's right. Exactly right. Yes,
And
you
that's
become.
very freeing.
It is. It's very
It is.
liberating. That was big for me when I just got to
Hmm.
that, when I finally really got to that point. And I don't want to say like, oh, I don't care. I do care. But it's like, no, no, I am not, I'm not going to put up with that anymore. It's
Hmm.
so liberating. Oh gosh. So Lisa, if people wanted to reach out to you, how would they connect with you? And then I know all this will be down in the show notes as well, so they can connect with you.
So we have, like I said, 8 locations. The main number that they can contact is our Florida location. It's 561-288-0377. I also gave my info email so that they connect with us at the office. That's for every state. Yeah, we definitely have a myriad of therapists with different modalities and different way of doing therapy, and all specialize in different things because we want it to be a one-stop shop. Like when you're ready to do the work, you're ready to do the work.
Right, right. And it's a complete package. So you are in 8 states, I think you said.
Yeah.
So the states that you're not in, are you able to refer people to
We
therapists?
are
Okay,
absolutely.
good,
And
good.
the idea for New Reflections Counseling is to become licensed in all states because we have a great way to help more people. When you're a therapist, you think, "Oh my God, I can't wait to get licensed," and then you never think about, I'm only really helping the people that are around me. I want to help more people. How do we
Yeah,
do it on a wide range?
yeah, yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, and that's why I'm doing my podcast to get that information out there and people don't have to pay for
Exactly.
it. They can come on here and learn and they don't have to, spend a lot of money. Spend any
I,
money
and it's
actually.
It's funny that you said that too. I do TikTok Tuesdays with New Reflections Counseling on TikTok, completely free. I ask all of the people that are viewing, message me. What do you want to hear about? What do you want to work through? What kind of ideas or what kind of struggles are you going through right now? We'll talk about it on TikTok Tuesday.
Oh, I love that. So TikTok
Yeah,
Tuesday. I love that.
TikTok
What
Tuesday.
is what's your, I guess your name or whatever you're on TikTok?
Oh, New
What?
Reflections, New Reflections, New Reflections. I'll send it to you because I don't even know what it is.
Okay. Yeah, it'll be in the show notes
But it's
again, but
definitely New Reflections.
I'll have to check it out too. That sounds really cool. I like that.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for explaining
Oh,
EMDR. I knew a lot of it, but I definitely learned more stuff about EMDR. And I'll tell you, everyone, I did it, and I'm actually going to get back into it because I didn't get to finish because my insurance ran out. But I'm going to get back into it because I have a fabulous therapist, and she's a lot like you, and so I definitely want to get back into it because it was really motivating.
it's powerful, and you don't even have to have a complex trauma to work through. It could be anything, it
Hmm.
could be the society that we live in, could be traumatic
Yeah,
and
it just
bring
yeah.
some.
Yeah,
Hmm.
everybody's kind of anxious right now, so it could be that. Yeah,
Hmm.
exactly.
Yeah,
So, well, thank
absolutely.
you so much for being here, and thank
Thank
you for
you for
sharing.
having me. I appreciate it. All right, take care.
Thank you.